So Lady Ghislaine, in 1991, Ghislaine Maxwell decamped to New York, where she became a fixture among the East Coast elite. She appeared in Washington at a party celebrating Bill Clinton's first inauguration. She was spotted with Prince Andrew at an S&M-themed Halloween party hosted by supermodel Heidi Klum. It was the Pimps and Hoes party, okay? This is that party where she was wearing a wig. Prince Andrew was there, so was Donnie Trump and his new woman. Neither Prince Andrew nor Klum responded to requests for comment. All right, Maxwell said during her July interview that she met Epstein, who was running a wealth management firm, in 1991 through a mutual female friend. Now, that date is a little squishy there. All right, she says she met him in 91. We're not exactly sure. We do know that she knew Trump before that, okay, because Donald Trump was, seen in photos on the yacht with Robert Maxwell in the late 80s, like 87. There's pictures of Trump on Lady Ghislaine with Robert Maxwell. And Trump was involved in that set. Absolutely. Robert Maxwell was involved with a lot of the same people that Trump was involved with. And the other thing that's interesting, though, is there is some suspicion from the Epstein book. You remember the Epstein book we looked at? So in the Epstein book, one of the people talked about it. I'm going to pull up the page because I feel like this is relevant and important. The very last page in the Friends group, this one. Look at this. It was from 𝗙𝗟𝗏𝗡, okay? And 𝗙𝗟𝗏𝗡 says, Jeffrey, I can remember in the mid-1970s you being a star salesman for our tax advantage strategies and hedged option program. I was running an account for Bob Maxwell. You always had the ability to know everyone and be charming. Was that when you first discovered the Maxwell teenage daughter? Happy birthday, 𝗙𝗟𝗏𝗡. Now this is mind-blowing because the mid-70s, she was born in 1961, okay? So in the mid-70s, what this is implying, guys, is that he worked for a company that ran an account for Robert Maxwell, and he was a charmer and schmoozer and networker. So there literally is a strong possibility that he may have groomed her, right? Like before she even became an adult and they got together, he may, I don't know, at a party on the yacht, we don't know. But this is real fucking suggestive here that this is included. Maybe he did. Maybe, or at the very least, he may have been hot for her from that day forward. And yes, we'll never know, but isn't that a wild detail? That is a wild detail. This book is pretty wild, but she included this. And so the mid-70s, she was like 14. In 75, she was 14. That would have been right up his alley, right? That would have been his perfect age. So that's really unusual. She said that she met him, though, in 91 through a mutual female friend. Following her father's death, she said, he asked her to help him find and decorate a house in Manhattan. Not long after, they began a brief romantic relationship. After that ended, Epstein kept her on his payroll as a property manager, overseeing operations at his homes in New York, Paris, New Mexico, and Palm Beach, where he purchased a $2.5 million waterfront compound about 2 miles from Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Epstein later bought a 70-acre private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands called Little St. James. That was in 98, I believe, and a 7-story townhouse on Manhattan's Upper East Side. Now, that townhouse had belonged to Leslie Wexner, the limited guy. He was one of those guys that was like a billionaire, which was pretty rare. So, and the reason why I dropped that in there is because now there's like 800 billionaires in America. But at the time that Jeffrey Epstein blew up and became this guy back when he was working at Bear Stearns, he latched on to one of the biggest fish in America from the very fucking beginning. That's the thing to keep in mind, because Jeffrey Epstein went from the Dalton School teacher and a junior associate at Bear Stearns to having a 7-story townhouse, the biggest house in all of Manhattan, in a period of 12 years. Okay. He went from not really having any money to being one of the wealthiest people in New York in literally 12 years because of his connection to that one guy. He hooked up with the biggest fish out there and then skyrocketed to wealth. This is them in the 90s, dude. Now, this is when they started. Remember, Maria Farmer, Annie Farmer, was 96 when they called the FBI. Maxwell's job was to ensure that his environs ran smoothly. She hired the decorators, gardeners, chefs to staff Epstein's homes, the builders, architects who worked on properties under construction, staffers who wanted to take vacation went to Maxwell for approval. She'd send requests up the chain to Epstein, who'd sign off with a simply yes or fine. So what these emails clarify is that Maxwell ran the business and Epstein just yesed and no'd, right? That was it. From the late 90s through the early 2000s, Maxwell and Epstein's social circles sometimes included Trump. 2003 New York Magazine article recounted a dinner arranged by Maxwell at Epstein's Upper East Side townhouse, which was attended by a group of barely clad models who interacted with high-profile guests, including Trump, Clinton aide Doug Band, and media magnate Mort Zuckerman. Now, this is the dinner where some of those models said they had to walk across the table, and those wealthy guys looked up their skirts and were judging their genitalia and or their underwear. And they had to, right? Because otherwise these guys could guarantee that they would never work in New York again. I mean, it's creepy, guys. So creepy. One of the email's few references to Trump came on September 14th, 2006, 2 months after Epstein was charged in Florida with solicitation of prostitution. It includes a list of 51 politicians, business execs, and Wall Street power brokers. The list includes people who've previously been linked to Epstein, including Jimmy Cain, former chief executive of Bear Stearns, Jess Staley, who would later be named the CEO of Barclays, and Trump. Cain died in 2021. Staley did not respond to a request for comment. Please review list and add or remove peeps, Maxwell wrote. Remove Trump, Epstein responded. The pair discussed additions to the list and at least one other deletion. Now, this is fascinating, guys, because Donald Trump has claimed, well, when I caught Jeffrey, taking my workers, I kicked him out of the club and I was a good Samaritan. Dude, Virginia Giuffre got recruited in 2000. This email was in 2006, and there's a list of people, and he's asking Trump to, they're taking Trump off the email. Now, they don't know what the list was for, but this was 6 years after Virginia Giuffre got, recruited from Mar-a-Lago, and it was a year before Epstein stopped being a paid member at Mar-a-Lago. Bloomberg was unable to determine the meaning of this list. The email has no subject line or additional commentary. Now, isn't that weird? The email has nothing. There's no subject line. There's no commentary. There's no words. It's just a list of 51 people and some instructions to add and remove. That's weird. Having no subject line is weird, guys. This is 2006, too. This is the early days of email. That is crazy. Trump's name surfaced again around the time Epstein was making an intense back-channel lobbying effort to get federal prosecutors to drop their case against him. It was in an email dated August 23rd, 2007, a month before he signed his non-prosecution agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office for SD Florida, which was with Alex Acosta, later Trump's labor secretary. And that was the non-prosecution agreement that ended the federal investigation, let him off on all federal charges, and gave Epstein and all of his lieutenants immunity. The emails indicate that Maxwell may have been referring to a team of reporters. So the email is from Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein, says, you have to assume they went to Donald Trump, then 𝗏𝗏, then docs in WPB, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, etc. Whoa, this is important, guys, because they don't know what this email means. You have to assume they went to Trump, then 𝗏𝗏, then docs in WPB, then 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. But you ready for this? You remember this name, guys? Okay. You know this name. I don't know if you remember it, but I'm about to remind you. Joel 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. He was our drawing guy. This is Joel 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who did this and the drawing, and he was the guy with the check. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Pretty weird. The guy who included the picture of the girls massaging his joint, the balloons with the kids, the Mar-a-Lago, the plane, yada, yada, yada. So this email is talking about Trump, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, I don't know what the docs in WPB is, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. The emails indicate Maxwell may have been referring to a team of reporters covering Epstein, who she expected would be seeking information from Trump, from Abe Gossman, the late healthcare magnate, whose palatial property sold to Trump. Oh, so Gossman is the guy who had that property that Epstein was trying to buy. Trump backdoored him with 𝗙𝗏𝗏, the Russian money, and then 2 years later, Trump sold it for 2.5 times the profit. Okay? The palatial property Trump bought for $41 million after a heated bidding war with Epstein. Joel 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the Palm Beach Police and Fire Foundation board member who'd travel on his jet. Wow. Dude, that's insane. Because this guy who created this picture, this guy right here, Joel 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. All right, there he is. So this guy was the dude behind the selling the fully used woman to Trump, right? This guy was a Palm Beach Police and Fire Foundation board member. All right, we know he was on the jet. We know he was a confidant. He also had some type of civic pull in town. Of course, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 did not reply to a request for comment. Okay, and then the White House said this is just more stupid fake news playing into the hands of the Democrat hoax trying to link President Trump and Epstein. White House spokesman Abigail Jackson said in response to questions about the reference to Trump in the emails. That's really interesting, guys, isn't it? Pressed earlier this summer about the history with Epstein, Trump said they fell out after Epstein stole an employee from Mar-a-Lago. That was an apparent reference to Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's more outspoken accusers, who later claimed Maxwell recruited her from the Trump resort to work as Epstein's masseuse. But the problem is, 2000 is when Virginia Giuffre gets recruited at Mar-a-Lago. 2003 is when Trump is in the birthday book with Mr. Joel 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And 2006 is when they're removing Trump from the list. 2007 is when they're discussing Trump and Joel 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and these other guys. We don't know why. Is it about talking to the press? It has something to do with him being, getting exonerated from that federal investigation and his immunity deal. We don't know the connection. And then, of course, in 2007 is when he was no longer a paid member at Mar-a-Lago. Even after Epstein's state indictment, the emails suggest that Maxwell leveraged her own high society ties to try to help him expand his network of academics, politicians, actors, bankers, and heads of state. Now, this is crazy because even after he got arrested and even after he got charged, she is still hooking him up with high society. And yes, everyone knew, okay? Everyone knew. Anybody, now granted, it was a slightly different ball game in 2006, which meant like you didn't have access to the internet like now, where you can instantly find out people's background and see their footprint. It was a little harder. So there's a possibility that brand new people that were just meeting him didn't necessarily know if they were like first contact, but once they were in that world for a while, they knew, okay? Anybody who was a repeat, visitor knew. You may have met him socially or been introduced to him, but once you met him, if you were hanging out in that crowd, you knew. Okay, certainly all of the modeling agency people knew. John Casablancas, Jean-Luc Brunel, Trump, they all knew. I mean, the modeling agencies functioned as trafficking vehicles already, bringing girls from Eastern Europe, like putting them in Trump properties, charging them exorbitant rent for roommate situations, taking their money, and then what little left they had was coming back to Trump in rent. And then every time they had a party, like that dinner with the girls walking across the table, those modeling girls from Eastern Europe had to come and be the entertainment. So everybody knew this. I mean, and the birthday book, right? The birthday book shows that all of his friends were well aware of what he was about. They all knew. They knew what he was like 20 years ago. They knew what he was like right now. There was no question among his inner circle, as we can see. Absolutely. Dude, it's gross, man. This shit is gross, dude. It is. The connections, okay? The connections between this shit. Like, that's what gets me is we have Donald Trump right now trying to avoid the Epstein thing, trying to play up the Charlie Kirk shooting, trying to play up, whatever he can with his, National Guard, his threats of using the military. He is on a constant PR campaign to avoid this Epstein thing, to refer to it as a hoax. But every single piece comes together that includes him. Trump, Joel Pashkow, right? The birthday note from Trump, the weird birthday pic of like everybody knows this, the Mar-a-Lago, the plane, like everything is tied together with these modeling guys. And again, Trump is insistent that it's a Democrat hoax. And I know in my heart of hearts, as do you, that when Trump calls something a hoax, it's 100%. He is like right in the center of it, right? He still calls Russia a hoax, but we know that Russia meddled in 2016. We know that Russia helped him beat Hillary Clinton. We know that he was talking to, these Russian guys at Trump Tower. I mean, Robert Mueller couldn't find the actual smoking gun. Why? Because of all the obstruction. And they should have charged Trump with obstruction. They had the goods for it, but they didn't charge him for whatever. And right, they didn't charge him. And as a result of that, of Robert Mueller not wanting to appear partisan, they were able to frame it as Russia and a hoax. But we know, and not only do we know that Russia helped him in 2016, we know that Trump laundered like $100 million for Russia with that fucking property. And that is sort of at the center of this web, was Epstein trying to buy that house from Ghostman, right? And then Trump moving in and buying it with Rybolov's money, the Russian oligarch, and then selling it back to Rybolev for even more money, this inflated price. And Epstein, knowing Trump doesn't have 40 million, Epstein went in and looked and found that Russian money, that money laundering shit. And then Epstein gets busted. And so, dude, a lot of this is all centered around Donald Trump. He's in the middle of it, guys. He was the center of the trafficking through the modeling agencies, the money laundering with the Russians. Epstein found out he got immunity, but he also was very clear that you're going to prison if you fuck around. Eventually, he ended up dead along with, a couple, 24 other people. And here we are. He's still trying to dodge this thing. And I feel like, man, dude, we got to keep going until these guys are brought to heel, dude. There needs to be accountability. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. You like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.